So this is a quick little video just talking about the this weird petroleum-based, oil-based clay that we use. This clay can be used over and over again. It's a non-permanent kind of material to help you work through ideas, and it's very easy to manipulate once you condition it, once you get it warmed up in your hands and it's malleable. So one thing about working with this clay is that it will create kind of an oily film on your hands, and some people find that very distasteful. But it is what it is, okay? The attributes that it has make it good for what we use it for, which is making things very quickly so that we can understand how a form might work, and then being able to use the clay again. But yes, it has this icky kind of feeling, and it will leave whatever surface you're working on a little bit oily as well. So after you work on a surface, you want to take some good cleaner, whether it's just a soapy cleaner that's going to break down in oil, okay? And wash down your surface. Otherwise, it'll really accumulate. So you noticed I was just kind of playing with some clay as I was talking, and as you warm up the clay in your hands, you want to be careful with your body parts, okay? A lot of people who have carpal tunnel syndrome or have some sensitivities in their hands can find that this really exacerbates those things, because you're really focused on getting an outcome and you forget to pay attention to what your body needs. And as a person who had some serious carpal tunnel issues in the past, I really try to pay attention to those things because it affects me and my students, and it's easy to lose track of what you're doing. So as I was talking here, I was just making something that was happening. It was just happening. I wasn't planning. But if I'm trying to replicate a form that I'm making, I have just a block of a little thing of clay, I'm going to kind of form it into the thing that I see, okay? Whether that is a little car, like your first activity, or whether it's this little thing here. And so I'm just, in this case, I'm just kind of lengthening the shape and seeing how much of the clay I need. I'm going to break that piece off, and I might kind of roll it down, and rolling it will turn it into a coil, pulling it will turn it into a type of coil as well. And practice is what you need with this kind of thing, okay? So I'm kind of replicating this form, and as I find that I need to take little pieces off, then I'll do that. Making a form just playing with something in your hands is very different from replicating a form, right? So while I was making this original one, I wasn't really thinking too much about anything. But as I'm making this second one, I actually need to think. So I'm looking at the structure, and I'm remembering back to how I made it, and I'm kind of trying to go kind of close to it. I'm not going to go too far, but at some points in time you're going to want to cut through things. So if you watched the short little video on tools, you know that you might have a plastic knife hanging around. You might, if you need to cut something, say, oh, I have a plastic knife, I bet that would work. Or use a skewer, as I use skewers for everything. And again, I find that my students, even when we're in the studio and we have a bunch of tools at our disposal, they still make up their own little tools, and I do the same, okay? Heaven forbid I go get the actual tool that would help me. So this clay is really helpful because, well, if I have a piece like this and I'm depending on gravity to keep it where it is, so this is at a slant, and I wish that you could see that at this angle. It's at a slant, but if I were to leave it like this, it would probably, with the heat in my house, it would just kind of slowly fall over. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you're playing with it. It'll look exactly like you want it to look at first, and then it'll kind of sloop and droop. But it really helps you understand what it is that you want to create, and you'll make a little model in clay like this so that you can understand how it's going to work. Okay. So if I want to add little details, let's say I want to add little hairs. Okay. So I'm going to take one of my skewers and add little hairs. And this clay, you know, just kind of gives me a sense of how something will look when I need to use it. If I was going to turn this into another, into my final sculpture, then I'd want to think about how to create something a little more sturdy. Would I have a few, would I have a piece of metal that was creating an armature for things to stand on? Would I have some little pieces of wood that would be kind of inside? So you could actually create an armature like around something. Let's see if I have any little ones. I don't have any little ones. I got this cutter. This will do what I need it to do. I want some tiny little pieces. So I have this piece of wood that's right there, and I might have another one that's overlapping it there. So this piece of wood is going up to there, and then this piece of wood kind of overlaps it there. So that might actually be, you know, what my armature might be inside my final thing. Okay, and that can just kind of give me an idea of what I'll be doing. So imagining that this is my clay and I'll be putting something inside it. That's much easier with this modeling clay than it can be when you get to the Sculpey, which, you know, is pretty, you can mess around with it quite a bit before you're done with it, but it's we like to make sure that we use all of those tools at our disposal. So we do a little model to kind of understand how it's all going to work, and then that is helpful. Okay, so hopefully that gave you mostly just a sense of this kind of clay and how you can manipulate it. You can see as I work with it more and more, it just gets extremely, it's almost easier to play with than Play-Doh. But it takes a little bit of manipulating to get it to this stage, okay? Also, when you want to stick something to this clay, you just stick it. There doesn't have to be any, like, slashing, getting out air bubbles, or worrying about that. Just kind of play around with it and see what happens. So, all of these short little videos, they just kind of give you a little sense of how to manipulate this clay, and hopefully each one touches on a few extra things that are important to consider. Okay.